Trackside tales, insider advice, lessons from the paddock. Find it all here on the Sector 1 Motorsport podcast in partnership with Formula Careers. Hello and welcome to the Sector 1 Motorsport podcast in partnership with Formula Careers. On today's episode, I'm joined by someone who pretty much does it all when it comes to motorsport media. Presenter, commentator, camera operator, vision mixer. We could carry on, but I won't, just to keep your sanity in check. Please welcome Kieran Mogg. Kieran, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. That's probably a very apt description of what I do. Pretty much a bit of everything, and it bores people to absolute death if I try to talk about it.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do just that. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction in your own words of who you are and what you get up to?
Yes, my name is Kieran Mogg. First and foremost, I'm a presenter, but I like to get involved in all aspects of the production side. So, I do camera hopping, yes, I do the vision mixing, I do running, um, I do sort of production assistance and a bit of commentary. I'm sort of a trainee commentator at the moment. It's not like properly quite as apt at it as I am at other things. And then it's content creation and that sort of stuff. It's just a bit of everything to do with sort of providing content around motorsport.
So let's go back to the very beginning then, because if you're working in motorsport, you've got to love it. So where did that love, that interest stem from?
A bit of a weird one. 2012 Monaco Grand Prix.
Okay.
Don't know why. Anything about that particular race. There was nothing that amazing about it. It was just my dad watched Formula One as I was growing up, and I always thought, what's so interesting? Cars going around in a circle, not interesting. I've always been like massive about cars, but the motorsport side initially wasn't that sort of. Yeah, I didn't really bother me too much. But then I sat down this one Sunday, and 2012 Monaco Grand Prix was on, and kind of went from there really, and I was obsessed with it ever since then, essentially. And it's kind of grown and grown and grown to follow other series and everything like that.
And when did you realise that you wanted to work in motorsport?
So that came 2018. So I've always wanted to be a presenter. That's always been my dream. And in 2018, myself and a friend of mine, we set up a website basically to write about cars and motorsports. We both wanted to try and get into the industry, and neither of us having any sort of connections. It was kind of like, okay, how the hell do we do this? So we started writing, and he eventually got a job in a magazine. I wasn't going too brilliantly for me. And then I went to Australia in 2019, which is where he lived, which is where he got the job at a magazine. And I started to do some writing in motorsport throughout that year. So I did V8 Supercars, I did TCR Australia, I did Stadium Super Trucks, a load of Australian series I covered over there. And from there it kind of like it sort of clicked. Okay, maybe this is a route up that I could go. Because I've been trying the standard sort of journalistic writing and everything route that didn't really work for me, and then so I sort of switched gears to okay, let's try motorsport, and go up here because it was obviously it's always been a love of mine, like I say, and as that went on, through 2018, 2019 and everything, I was kind of like, okay, this is actually quite fun, doing all this stuff. And then COVID hit, and everything sort of took a massive hit. I came back from Australia because I spent a year over there. Came back, COVID sort of got started, and it didn't really sort of get back to where things were going. And the journalistic route wasn't working. So then I sort of switched tracks and ended up going the production route, which is more interesting anyway, in my opinion. Not to sort of slag off any journalist, but it's more interesting to me. So
Yeah, so are you glad you don't have any regret about the COVID almost helped you in a way by making you realise that you were interested in something else, maybe?
uh, in a way, but I think COVID was it was a real knockdown because I'd actually, when I was coming back from Australia, I sort of set up a load of events that I was supposed to be going to in 2020. And like, I remember I was invited by Fiat to this event, which kind of like, oh God, that's amazing. I was like 21 or 22, whatever it was. And being invited by a brand like Fiat to something like this was amazing. And then, COVID just took everything and just, shut it all down. And it took me a while to try and sort of get my mind back into it, because once I realised that like all the momentum that I built up was gone, try and get it back up was difficult. But yeah, in a way, it then forced me to switch tracks. Okay, like okay, let's stop focusing on the journalism route, start focusing on the production, which I've always found more interesting anyway. And so probably in a way did help, but I've I've struggled to see it as a way to help. It's more been a looking back, it's kind of like a hindrance.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
It happened. It's done now. Let's have a look at that production kind of role that you've been in. A lot of people, I feel like they understand the presenting bit, the commentating, because they see that when they tune in. But production behind the scenes, there are lots of different roles to get involved in, and you've been in lots of different roles. Can you talk us through some of those roles and what they actually entail? What are you actually doing?
Yes, so if you go from the very top of it, you've got the project manager. So project manager essentially, it's kind of like a producer. It sort of depends on how big the crew is as to how many different roles obviously you have. So at the level that we tend to work at, we're not like Formula One level. We're sort of, club level and sort of national lower level sort of stuff. So at that level, you have the production manager, which is also a producer. So they essentially get everything sorted in terms of a venue map, so they know where all the cameras are supposed to be going. They liaise with the client, which is obviously the race series, as to how many cameras they can afford, what sort of presenting lineup or comms lineup they would like. And then from there, the production manager can kind of build the crew and the plan around that essentially. So they will choose the people that are going to be working on that event. So you'll have the production, sorry, the project manager usually doubles as the producer and the director, which does the vision mixing at our level anyway. But once you go a bit higher, obviously, then that'll be a separate role. They have started to, in my experience, they have started to separate them a little bit more. So you've got the production manager slash producer, then you've got the director slash vision mixer. So they'll be at a computer, sort of switching the cameras to essentially produce the feed that you eventually see on your screens. You'll then have all the individual camera operators. So you'll have a general trackside camera, so on a tripod out in a field somewhere pointing at the track. And then you'll have a roaming camera operator, which will be a camera mounted on the shoulder, and you've got it's called a roaming rig. So you hold it like this and you walk around, and it's usually either pointed at a pit lane presenter or pointing generally at cars and just sort of making filler content. Um, then you'll have a runner, which essentially is just a problem solver, which is one of, if not the most interesting role in all of production, because you do a little bit of everything. You fill in vision mixing when the producer needs to go off for a break. You fill in camera operating when they need to go for a break. You sort of run around and spot the camera operator and the presenter when they're in the pit lane to make sure so they don't run into any £1 million cars or anything. And so you do a little bit of everything. Also, like when the static cameras, for example, you have to go out and obviously change batteries to make sure that you don't lose any coverage while you're out there. So that sort of stuff. It's yeah, there's quite a bit to it. And then you've got another role, which is a setup operator, which essentially you normally get that from the runner. They essentially go to the track the day or two before. Sorry, the sirens going past.
It's okay.
Um, you essentially go to the track like a day or two before and get all the kit in place, do a systems test just to make sure everything's talking to each other correctly. So once we get there on race day, the kit can literally just be powered on and ready to go straight away. Normally it's a 1 day setup, but with places like Alton Park, for example, because it's quite tricky to actually get around when the cars aren't on track, we actually have to do it over 2 days. So, for example, we were there for 750 Motor Club 2 weeks ago, I think, and we had to get there, I think, 4 o'clock on Thursday evening, and we stayed until 9:30, I think, just trying to set up cameras on track. Then the same thing again the next day. We set up all the stuff in production throughout the day. Then once the cars finished on track, then we had to run around and do all the systems check at about sort of 6 o'clock at night. So yeah, that's a kind of a 2 day setup. But normally it's a 1 day. Yeah, that's kind of all the basic and sort of general roles that you have in production. Yeah.
And do you have a favorite role that you've worked in? Forget about presenting and commentating, because I'm sure presenting is top tier, top dog. But out of those kind of production roles that you've worked in, what has been the most entertaining?
Entertaining, definitely a runner, because like I say, you get to do a bit of everything. In terms of probably most rewarding, it's going to be the vision mixer, because you are the last port of call before the viewer sees what you're producing, and that's a real sense of pride to do something like that. But yeah, most entertaining as well, because it's uh, for an ADHD brain like mine, it just means that you keep interested, you keep doing a bit of everything, and it keeps you entertained essentially.
And doing roles like this, vision mixing particularly, the concept, the idea of that absolutely terrifies me. I don't want that pressure on my shoulders. No, thank you. How do you cope with that, knowing that it is you doing that?
On messing up,
Yeah.
mainly. There's a few mistakes. I mean, I can definitely talk through a couple of mistakes that I've made. Like, for example, putting a next race sting on in the middle of a race. Um, yeah, I've also there's also music. Obviously, when you're doing the grids and everything, you have music underneath, which is also it's usually quite subtle, and then we turn it off when the race starts. I can sort of name several times when I forgot to turn off the music, and the race starts, the music's still going. But it's really just a case of once you kind of got over the aspect of you're in control of this production, it's put that out of your mind completely. You start to think about, okay, that camera's first, that camera's second, that camera's third. All I've got to do is just click, click, click. And once you get into that rhythm, then it starts to make a lot more sense and it starts to become a lot easier. And what you find as well, which is quite interesting, sort of psychology almost, is that your brain initially it starts so narrow-minded, you kind of go, oh my god, I need to do this, oh my god, I need to do that, But then as you start to get more comfortable with it and you start to sort of do it almost automatically, your brain starts to go like this, and you can see a lot more of what's happening, and you can process a lot more once you've dialed in. And it's a really weird thing to happen and thing to feel as it happens. But it obviously just means that you're getting comfortable, that just comes obviously with time and practice. But yeah, the more that you do it, the more your eyes and your brain just go like this essentially. So it's initially, yes, it's very scary, and there's always that element of nerves, but once you get used to it, it starts to become more just like a normal role in production. You don't really think too much about it.
And those skills you need for the roles that you've worked in, where did you learn them? How did you pick those up?
So I went to college after school. So I actually dropped out of school because it wasn't working for me for various different reasons. And I went to college and I did creative media diploma. And so I learned the various sort of basic skills of camera operation and vision mixing, because we had a whole studio set up at college. And we had a whole production room with a production desk and all the screens that were coming in from the feeds of the cameras and everything. So I learned the basics from that. But then the flip side of that is when I've actually been working on it for real, in a live environment at races, I am that annoying person that goes, how does that work? What do you do with that? I just kind of try to just pick up things and just ask questions, which I'm sure is very annoying to some people. And some people don't, you can't be bothered to ask. But to me, because I find it all so interesting, I just keep asking about it. And so I've kind of watched them and I've been like basically just nagging them to let me have a go at some things. And eventually they do. And obviously they sit beside you initially, and you pick up the skills like that. So it's sort of a bit from training from college and a bit from just asking questions, watching, and monkey see, monkey do almost situation, essentially.
In your opinion, do you think, say someone wanted the exact same role as you're doing and they wanted to come work under you, shadow you, do you think that is a valid and good route into a job like yours?
100%, yeah, because the way that I got into it was basically just annoying them and to let me have a go. Uh, it's you've got to think about there's so many people that want to do work like this, and a lot of people don't think about the effort you have to put in just to even get into that, let alone keep there and stay there. And so yeah, like working underneath, like sort of what I'm doing is, yeah, it's a really good way into it. And I mean, I've got a friend that I've recently got into camera upping with us, and he did his first event, and he wanted to come and do the roaming camera operator with me because I was presenting. And I was kind of like, that's not where you start. That's a bit of a higher level. You start at the track side. And he was a bit disappointed, but like, you understand, you've got to work your way up. And yeah, like the trackside camera operators is sort of where you start. You start at obviously a low level, you don't go straight to the high level events. Um, and even to be honest, running, you don't come straight into running. Although it's a bit ironic because in a standard like sort of TV world, a runner is you almost your base level. A researcher and running, you two base levels. Whereas a runner is what we do because you've got so much responsibility to fix things. You have to understand all the systems, and so almost the trackside camera operators are where you sort of get going, and that's later when you can then progress into a runner situation because then you understand the systems. Um, but I mean, I've had people sort of shadow me in the past, and like both on cameras and just general running about, and they always find it quite interesting. And it is, yeah, like I said, it is probably a good route into it. But the best route really would just be to badger, I think, just
I was
badger
going to
rules.
say, how did you get your first production role?
So it started in 2022. So when I sort of got out of the whole feeling sorry for myself after COVID and everything, I I started looking at the production side, and I initially found 750 Motor Club, and I was like, right, I want to get in with the production of this. I want to find out how I can do this. So I emailed 750 Motor Club, and I was like, I'd love to do some work experience here. This is what I've done. This is, I've kind of just listed out my sort of qualifications at college. I do a fair bit of YouTube and everything, so I kind of just put all that in there. Almost blagged it kind of thing. And they basically went, "Oh, it's not us. It's a company called Alpha Live that do it." I went, okay, so I went to Alpha Live and I badgered them, and they didn't respond for ages. And it wasn't until I went to it was a Motorsport Days Live at Silverstone in 2022. Alpha Live were filming. It was basically cars on track. It was like just a trade event, and I spotted them. And because I'd sent them so many emails, they actually called me over because they'd recognised me. And we got chatting from there, and they then invited me to come and do a camera job and just obviously just evaluate how I was. And it kind of went from there essentially. But obviously, they wouldn't have recognized me had I not emailed that amount of times and everything. And unfortunately, like if you don't have any connections in it, that's what you have to do. You just got to badger until they kind of go, oh, fine, there you go. Yeah, basically. So that's how I got into it. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. You mentioned doing YouTube in there because I used to do that when I was a teenager. It was all these videos, every Sunday, new upload. I look back on it now and it's awfully cringe. But I think that really set me up for being a good presenter and being able to be confident in front of the camera, being able to be confident in front of a microphone. Do you think that's benefited you in your presenting career?
Yeah, 100%. Because the YouTube stuff, like, yeah, if I went to like the very first videos, it's terrible, genuinely awful. And most of it was completely unscripted, and I keep going and all this different sort of terminology that really isn't terminology, and and the confidence as well in front of the camera because I was so unsure of myself. I was so unsure as to how to project my voice and how to have a screen presence. It just didn't work at all. And as time went on, it got a little bit better, but it was really a mix between YouTube and college because I badgered them to let me have a go in front of camera at college as well. Between sort of those two, that things eventually started to get into a position where I felt like I was more comfortable in front of the camera, and it sort of came to a head where I did a like sort of mini documentary of college in 2016, and I sort of watched it back initially. I was like, that's good. And I showed it to people, friends and family. They were like, that's really good. And I was like, okay, finally, I'm there. Look back at it now and go, oh my God, that's terrible. But it does, you do have to, it's not something that comes overnight. You have to genuinely just work it up and prepare yourself just with time and practice. And so, yeah, YouTube is a very good way of doing that. And it also helps you weave through horrible comments and grow thicker skin, which you kind of have to.
I completely agree with everything you've just said there. It's quite funny as well because I look back at some of the first motorsport interviews I did, and I think an issue with me is I shot for the stars straight away. So the first people I was interviewing, I started with Michael Italiano, Callum Ilott, Marcus Armstrong, and I look back and I'm like, they were such amazing guests, and I was such a bad interviewer. Yes, it was fun, you could kind of watch it, but compared to an interview like we're doing now, I look back and I'm like, I wish I could do that again at this point because it would have been 10 times better. Similar questions, but just the way I speak now, the way I can hold myself in an interview would have worked out so much better. But I guess memories got me to where I am now. So hopefully it's okay still being out there on the internet.
It's like you said, with interviewing, that's an entirely different technique. I mean, when I first came into motorsport, and the first thing obviously was to do interviews, and I was like, ah, I don't know how to do this. And
Yeah.
so the very first one I did was like a paddock show in Ireland, and it was awful. It was really because I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know, like I wasn't that sort of into it with the karting, which is what we were filming at that point. And like the interviewing side is a completely different skill set to even just presenting. So like I'm impressed that you managed to get the likes of Callum Hilott straight away. That is pretty impressive.
I don't know why he said yes. He shouldn't have, honestly. Let's talk about your presenting more then. Do you think because you have the foundation, you have all of this knowledge of the production roles that it makes you a better presenter? I feel like it would almost make you kinder to the producers and the runners because you've been there too.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that actually. I was chatting with a commentator called Andy McEwen a couple of months ago, and he was talking about how he's never had any experience in the production side. He's only ever been a commentator and a presenter. And he said that he's obviously watched me present and he's watched me do all the production stuff. And he was just like, it must seem so much easier having that background, having that knowledge. And I never really thought about it until he mentioned it, but it possibly does make it a little bit easier knowing how it all works. And for example, when there's an issue with the camera, and obviously the roaming camera op is there trying to figure it out, rather than standing there aimlessly, I can actually go, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Because I know how to use that camera. I've done it. I've done that role. So that does help. But I think the main thing is understanding what the crew is going through because with live events, nothing ever goes right. It doesn't go perfectly at all. We have not had a single event that has gone perfectly from start to finish, and that's just the nature of live broadcasting. And understanding the issues that they face, and understanding the pitfalls of it all, definitely does make it easier. Yes, you have those times where you kind of get a bit irritated, a bit angry. I mean, there was one instance where nothing was going to plan. It was so disorganized, and I was getting really sort of pent up and frustrated about it. And but I could hear the producer in my ear, and he sounded even more frustrated than I was. But I knew why, so I was kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna sort of keep quiet here. Like I'm gonna let my rage out, let my core over here, let them deal with it back in production and everything like that. So yeah, it does help in terms of understanding what they're going through, in terms of the understanding the whole sort of system and how everything's set up. It does help, but it's probably not as much as understanding what the people are going through, because then you can kind of yeah, you just know what they're going through, so you know how much space to give, you know what advice to or not advice, what things to say, what things to not say, whereas other people might not. So yeah, that probably does come with an advantage.
I feel like you can just be a bit more sympathetic when things start going wrong. You don't I know not everyone will start pointing fingers and blaming, but you can be like, "Do you know what? I've made that mistake too," or "I pressed that button and it did this too, so I'm just gonna breathe and let it happen. It will resolve itself."
Yeah, no, exactly. And the thing is, like, you have the camera operators, which I've done a lot more camera operating than I've done producing, and that's kind of the real sympathy that I have, because although production manager and producer, that's all very high stress. You've got a lot going on. But looking at it in more layman's terms, they're sat down. The Roman camera op is not only walking around all day long, but he's also got this quite heavy camera on his shoulder. And believe me, your arms kill afterwards. And so I will just take the camera off and just hold it just for 5 minutes to give him a bit of a break, because I know what it's like. And it's like, at least I can do it. I've been holding a microphone, but this isn't hurting. So I'll hold that for 5 minutes just to give yourself a break. So that, yeah, you do definitely have the sympathy, because you've experienced it as well. Yeah.
And you're working as a freelancer, which means you can dance between all of these different roles. Is that what you love about being freelance?
Well, I've actually only been full-time freelance for about 3 weeks now, so it's all very, very recent. But yeah, the whole freelance aspect is definitely useful because I've gone for a couple of these jobs as a full-time role, and at the time when I didn't get them, it was a real gut punch. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, and looking back, it shows that had I not had I got that role, I wouldn't be able to do the kind of stuff that I'm doing now. I wouldn't be able to dance between all these different things. I wouldn't be able to sort of grow and work with different companies. Had I sort of stuck myself with one company, I would have been just doing the bare minimum. I probably wouldn't have even been doing that much presenting. Whereas now I can kind of go to any other production company and just go, well, I've got this, and experience. And if they need this, I can help. And it also means that I can go to race series and just go, do you need someone? And I'm there. So yeah, freelancing definitely does make it easier. I don't know whether I love it for the freedom aspect is a bit of a sort of double-edged sword because when I was growing up, I never wanted to work for myself. I always wanted to work for someone else, which I know sounds a bit backwards. But the reason for that is my parents owned a company growing up and it nearly destroyed them and the whole family. And I kind of saw that. I was like, I'm never doing that ever. But the more I've grown up, the more I've realized why they went to own their own company because working for other people can be horrible. And so then, yeah, having the freelance aspect is fantastic, but it just comes with obviously the additional stress of just you've got to go find every single penny. And there's not that much money to be made in motorsports, which makes the competition very fierce, and you've got to prove yourself why they should give the job to you over other people. And so it's a double-edged sword really, but I do enjoy the freedom of it, and I do just enjoy being able to wake up and every single day now I can work to exactly what I want to do, not to what other people want me to do. And that aspect is completely game changing. It's completely changed my mindset on everything. Even just sort of I think about 2 weeks ago before I left my job, that's crossed my mind. I was kind of like, oh yeah, I can wake up and work for me. I can do what I want, and that is a real big mental change. And yeah, it's very very nice. Yeah.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You've mentioned the word badgering a lot. We've spoken about you badgering people to get noticed, to be seen. How important is that, and how do you exactly go about doing it in a respectful way where they're not going to call the police and say you're stalking them?
I think I toed the line, but I mean, it's obviously everyone's going to be different, and I've always sort of struggled, which is a bit backwards considering I sort of live in front of the camera. I've always struggled with self confidence, and sort of to be able to then go and contact people and actually believe that I am sort of worthy of going to work for them when I know full well there's loads of other people with loads more experience that are going to be more mature, they're going to be more this, they're going to be more that. Like in my head, I'm kind of like, why should they pick me? Because I'm not as good as some of these other people. But yeah, the importance of badgering really in an industry like this, where you've got so many people that are trying to get into it. If you only contact once, then nobody's going to ever remember you. If you contact twice, they might kind of go, "Oh yeah, I vaguely remember." But if you contact multiple times, over and over and over again, they'll kind of go, "Oh yeah, I know you," because they've seen your name pop up that many times. And I probably have an advantage in that aspect because my name's a bit unique. It's not the most pleasant name in the world, but it's something that people remember. Um, but in terms of doing it in a respectful way, what I've done in the past is email where possible. I've tried to comment. LinkedIn is so powerful. So like commenting on people's LinkedIn posts and trying to sort of build up a relationship on there. Try to go network in person. Try to find events where people that you need to meet are going to be at. For example, I went to uh, a Brit car event in 2022, and it was where Kieran Broadbent won his championship with Praga, and I found out Praga through that event, obviously through Jimmy Broadbent and everything, and so I started lightly badgering Praga and their press officer Lucy, to try and, is there anything I can do, anything at all? I kind of mentioned it a few times. I commented on a couple of her posts, and then when an opportunity did come up in early 23, she then messaged me and she went, "We've got this role if you want to have a go at it." And I was like, "Yeah, fantastic." And because obviously I'd made the effort to reach out and try to put it in a way of, I understand that there's going to be a lot of competition. I understand that you might have people that you go to, but if you ever need anybody to just jump in, I'm available. And that's kind of the way that I like to try and frame things. I don't try to say, "Oh, I'm this and I'm that and blah blah blah," because people are going to see you as big-headed, and it's people don't want to work with big egos. So it's I try to be respectful in the way of, if you need someone, I'm here. If not, then I'd love to be kept in mind for any future roles. That's kind of like my general feel that I kind of give to people. But in terms of the importance of badgering, yeah, I think it's incredibly important for anything to the caliber of this. That just comes part of the course with it. It's imperative that you do it, because if you don't, then you're not going to be remembered. And if you're not remembered, you're not going to get anywhere.
And following on from that, building your own personal brand, having an online presence and people knowing who you are and the kind of things you do is so, so important, particularly in this little motorsport club we have going on. How have you found that? What have you been doing to try and build that presence, build that personal brand?
So I've tried to just publish everywhere that I can. And so obviously I've got YouTube, I've got TikTok, I've got Instagram, I've got Facebook. I try to publish on all of them as much as I can, whether it be updates about what I'm doing or just general content as well. So obviously YouTube and TikTok, that's not always stuff that I'm doing. That's more a case of, how can I make something that people are going to find useful, that people are going to find quality content. So that'll be sort of mini documentaries, that'll be sort of quick facts, that I just try to upload just to get my name out there a little bit more. LinkedIn is one of the biggest places, because the type of people you get on LinkedIn obviously going to be more concentrated than the type of people that you're going to get on YouTube or TikTok. And although I've got millions of views on TikTok, and I'm close to a million, I think, on YouTube, those views, for the most part, are not going to be people that be working in the industry. It's going to be people that are just generally interested. Whereas LinkedIn, I can specifically target those that I think are going to be good. And one of the things that I did early on, which is probably in a way not the best, but I looked at people that were working in the roles that I want to be going after, and I just tried to connect with every single one of them. I just searched the roles one by one and just try and connect with every single person that was in the UK. And I wanted to, one of my biggest things was try to get the 500 plus connections on LinkedIn as early as possible. So when people looked at my profile, it looked like, "Oh, he's been doing it for a while." But in actual fact, I hadn't. That's one of the biggest things that I try to do to outreach. And I try to post on LinkedIn as much as possible to demonstrate what I was doing. Because obviously, the type of people that are viewing the content on LinkedIn are going to actually be the type of people that can help you get to where you want to go. And like I was saying before, with badgering, the more people see your name, the more they'll remember you. And it's got to a point where I have people that I work with, and they've started calling me Mr. LinkedIn, because they keep seeing me posting on LinkedIn and just so active on there, which just means obviously it's working, and you have people contact you that wouldn't ordinarily. So yeah, my outreach has basically just been trying to publish on as much as I can, and also trying to think strategically about it. So in terms of Instagram, that's a slightly different format to what I do with the others. So for example, at the start of the year, I was part of the winter series that Alpha Live covered. So we went out and we did the Porsche Sprint Challenge of Southern Europe, I think it's called, and the GT Winter Series, and the Prototype Winter Series, and Formula 4 that was out there as well. So we went across Spain and Portugal. And every weekend that I was out there, I'd film a little behind the scenes reel and just publish that. After the first two, I kind of thought, why don't I just try and collab post with Alpha Live? and obviously that will grow my reach, and it's something for them to publish that's free. So I do that, and it got to the point where they were constantly asking me, "So when's it ready? Is it ready yet? Been watching it." Actually, we were in the airport in Barcelona, and I was editing it on my phone. I finished it, published it, and I went to go and get some food from Burger King. And James, one of the producers, was walking back down. I could hear my voice coming out of his phone. He was watching it, and I'd uploaded it 2 minutes beforehand. Um, and, and so that sort of stuff, it just makes the people that follow the alpha page start to recognize me and know me. And obviously, those type of people are the exact type of people that I need to know me. And so it's thinking quite strategically about, okay, what content is going to benefit you on different platforms, and going like that essentially. The links, the YouTube and TikTok, people don't care about you; they care about what you're giving them. And so if it's quality content that's going to teach them something, or it's going to educate them or entertain them, then they'll watch it. If it's not, then they don't care. And you have to learn that the hard way, but that's the reality of it. Instagram, it's a bit of a sort of show and tell platform, isn't it? People like to see the cool stuff; they don't like to see anything else. So you put the cool stuff in, and let them see that, which does well. And then LinkedIn, sort of similar, but yeah, it's sort of changing it slightly per platform, and just slowly building it up, and putting your name out there, essentially.
Looking back at your career so far, overall, all of the stuff you've achieved, all of the roles you've been in, what would you say is your proudest achievement so far?
That's a tricky one. I had a feeling you'd ask me something like that, and I've been thinking about it, and I'm not sure
But it's a
because
good thing if it's difficult. It means you've got so much to be proud of.
one thing that always springs to mind is Race of Remembrance 2023. Um, for those that don't know what Race of Remembrance is, it's a big charity event that's held in Anglesey, and the atmosphere is firstly incredible. I was hired to do a roaming camera operator for the weekend over there, and being in the paddock around all those teams was fantastic. I mean, they start off with, it's called a biathlon of foolishness, where they run from the pit, round the track, into the Northern Sea in November, then back out of the sea and back round to the pit. And they have to do it in fancy dress, and they have to do it like in all these different costumes. The people wearing panda suits, there's people wearing a dinosaur suit, there was all sorts of weird and wonderful contraptions. And like the weekend kicked off with that. There was no racing; it was just that to start with. And I'm like, okay, this is different. And as that day went on, um, there was three commentators slash presenters that were kind of rotating around, being in comms and being down in the pit lane to do interviews. And I noticed that the gaps, as the day was going on, the gaps between the presenters coming down was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm guessing because it was getting colder and colder and colder, so they were obviously trying to cower inside, which I don't blame them. And at one point, I had the producer rain it down to me and go, "We need an interview. We got one." I don't have a presenter. And I had a guy called Ryan next to me who was doing the other camera operator, the other roaming cam. And he went, "Oh, you can jump in front of the camera?" And I was like, "Oh, so we asked James first, the producer." I'm like, "Yeah, quickly ask James." So we asked James, and he goes, "Yeah, go for it, go for it." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm there, and I look like a little sort of troll, essentially, a gnome that you find in a garden, because I had this woolly hat on. I was absolutely freezing. I had this massive coat, and I had this high vis that I was wearing, obviously, because I was a camera operator, and I was given the microphone. And with 5 minutes, I was like, "Okay, you're live. Okay." And I was just interviewing people for about 20 minutes. And and even though I wasn't hired to be a presenter for that, being able to say that I presented on an event like Race of Remembrance is a real big highlight. So yeah, that's a pretty special one, I think.
So, to reflect on all of that, if you were to speak to that boy who watched the 2012 Monaco Grand Prix and fell in love with it, what would you say to him about everything you've achieved now?
Keep at it, because you know, as much as it's a case of there's obviously an element of luck in it. It would be stupid and well, just stupid, in fact, just to completely downplay the luck part of it. But there's going to be so much time where you just feel so like this isn't going to happen, and I had that so many times. You know, the amount of videos that I put out that just did nothing and went nowhere, and yeah, I think the most important thing is to just remember that, like, if you try your best and it doesn't happen, then okay, so be it. You did your best, but if there's times where you know that you could be doing it, you could be reaching out and you aren't, you're kind of going, oh, it's not worth it because it's not going to happen, then that's on your own. And I've been guilty of that, as I'm sure anybody else has. You know, I've got to a point where I've been, oh, it's not worth it. I'm just not going to. And then, you know, a week later, I'm like, oh, I'll try. So that's one of the big things that I think I say. And the other thing I'd say 100% is plans do not go as you think they're going to go. Just ride the wave. Just see where it takes you, see what happens. Because this is not the route that I expected to be going, but I am also not upset that this is the route that it's gone, because you know I'm in a very fortunate position that I get to do what I love for a job, and it's not come in the most conventional sense. You know, there's a lot of people that I work with that have gone a much more conventional route to it. I've kind of just zigzagged right my way up to where I am. But yeah, just stick at it and just try not to stick too closely to plans if they're not going to plan, because other things might be coming around the corner that you don't expecting. So yeah.
I know you've given us a little bit of advice in there that we can take away, but what more advice would you give to people wanting to go into a similar role to you? What are the best things that they can be doing to make it happen?
Definitely badgering and keeping persistent on, obviously, if it's a case of working on production, obviously go after production companies. That's the first and foremost thing, I think. Make sure that you're obviously presenting yourself in a light of, I'm looking for work experience. You know, you make it very clear that you're not sort of overselling yourself as, oh yeah, I'm a freelance camera operator, you know, blah, 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 and then you get there and you go, so how do I turn this on? You know, you don't want to do that at all. Like, if you kind of come from a fact of, I'd love some work experience, I'm trying to get into this field, then there'd be a lot more understanding with you when you don't get it right exactly first time. And then the other thing is to go out of your way to try and get that experience, whether it be filming videos on your phone. You know, there's no reason people can't do that. I filmed a college project on an iPhone because I couldn't be bothered to go and deal with one of their cameras again. Because it's too massive. So I got my mom's old iPhone, I put it on a tripod, and I was like, right, here we go. And I just filmed it with that. And there's no reason that you can't do stuff like that. And also, it depends also on what you're wanting to go after, because if you're wanting to go into the production side, there's almost ample opportunity in terms of work to get that sort of thing. Like, if you want to go into freelance videography, that can then go hand in hand with that. You know, you can kind of come from a fact of, I'm a freelance videographer, I can come and you know, we can work with the cameras. But if you're wanting to become a commentator or presenter, that's an entirely different thing. You know, presenters in the conventional sense, they go to university, they do broadcast journalism, and you work your way up that way. If you're looking from a motorsport sense, they're commentators turns presenters, which is why I say I come from a really zigzag point of view, because I didn't do commentary first, I did presenting first. In that sense, it's just about trying to find the people that can offer you these opportunities, and so networking. So yeah, it's a case of just giving yourself the best opportunities you can by going and doing that additional work to then show what you can do. Offering to go, you know, you're going to have to work for free. I've done countless things for free because that's how you get yourself in. So yeah, come from a point of view, like, I'm looking for work experience. I'd love to come and have a go and see what you're all about, and this, that, and the other. And then also try to find the people that can get you into those situations, and you know, if, for example, if you want to do commentary, there's no reason you can't just go to a little club event near you and try and find the commentators and try and speak to them and go, look, I'd love to do this. Have you got any advice of what you could do? And they might even go, well, I've got an event next week if you want to come and have it. You just never know. So I think it's just a case of all those three. Make sure you put yourself in the position of preparing yourself as much as you can. Yeah, just be honest and a network. That's the three sort of prongs I'd say really to get into it.
Network, network, network. I think that's going to be like my new life motto. Well, Kieran, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your career so far. And we hope we will see you on our TVs or commentating on lots more to come. We will be back again next week with another career talk. Thank you so much for watching.